And why does God do this? Why does he allow such a thing? Having a shit body with treasure inside of the soul. This doctrine belongs to God. This body belongs to us. The body represents human strength, human power, much inferior. Human strength, human power, human endeavor, anything that you want to add human to it, the doctrine represents divine power, doctrinal thought. And so there's a huge contrast between both of these contents, the earthen vessel and the treasure inside of it. And here the answer is given right here. The NIV translates it, but we have this treasure in jars of clay, the human body, to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. In other words, to accentuate or to emphasize his power a lot more, he uses our human body with all its limitations, with all its frailties. He uses that to demonstrate his infinite superior power. He uses our body to demonstrate that we cannot do it ourselves. In fact, you're going to find yourself many times in situations where you are very limited and you cannot use your human power nor your best abilities. If you're one of those that depends on human strength, if you're one of those that depends on fighting ability, you're one of those that says you want to throw it down all the time. Just because you cannot handle an argument or you don't know how to speak correctly, you want to throw it down all the time, that's your solution. Well, guess what? You're going to find yourself in a situation where you're not going to be able to throw those hands. If you're one of those that depends on beauty, and thank you, officer, I'm sorry, officer, and all this, and you depend entirely on beauty, you're going to find yourself in a situation where you cannot use that human ability. What about you, those who are more on the intellectual side? Or what about those that are more astute, more clever, and you think you're slick? Then you could do this and become a little bit more serpentine and try to get away with things by, just maneuvering this and that and trying to, move the pawns around a little bit. You're going to find yourself in a situation where you cannot use that. That all falls under the frailties of the body, human ability, human strength. You're going to have to depend entirely on doctrine. And God does it on purpose. For you to find yourself in that situation where you cannot use your human strength and only depend on that doctrine, that treasure inside of you. Why? To emphasize that it's God who does the work, his infinite power, in contrast to your puny ass little stupid power that you can use. You who thinks you're very smart and very clever and very astute and cunning, you're not going to be able to use it. It's God's power that counts here. You don't believe me? Just keep advancing in the plan of God. He'll put you in a situation where you cannot use your power. You're going to have no other way, no other place to turn, nothing but to use that doctrine inside of your soul. And you better start thinking it and connecting it and talking to God while you're in there, because if not, you're going to break apart. And whatever suffering happens, if you're too lazy to apply that doctrine, all that suffering that happens, if it falls on you in that situation, is going to be used as punishment because you were too lazy to use that doctrine inside of your soul. It happened to me, it's going to happen to you. But now that we understand where the verse is going, let us go over the doctrine of the vessels. Because vessels is used in many different ways in this scripture. Now, doctrine of vessels, definition, etymology. We have the word skeuo. I did not underline it, pardon me. Skeuo and skeuos are partly different. Skeuo is used for furniture, equipment, or an object used as an instrument, utensils. It is also used as a container, skeuo. But skeuos also can be used for household utensils, but this one implies more a container, a vase, a cup. Skeuos. And that is what we have here. And so in the Greek also we have angeion, and this is used for a vessel or a flask. What about the Hebrew? In the Hebrew we have, nevel. This is a container, specifically an amphora, kind of, thin neck with some handles around. And then we also have kali. It's a vessel or other types of furniture or instruments. Now, a little bit of explanation. The Jews use many types of containers for different purposes. Obviously, the times have not changed. They've only changed in terms of aesthetics. They used earthen containers, leather containers. I forgot to put here glass containers. There was glass at the time in the ancient world. Also metal containers for more affluent people. Metal containers were used in the temple, such as golden vessels to store oil and incense, to catch blood, to store the manna. A golden pitcher, for example, was used to contain wine for the libations in the temple. Every household used vessels to store water, wine, flour, food, even to put objects and refuse as well. So there was always that problem with the chamber pot. If you were too lazy to go out and go to the public restrooms and throw out your refuse out there, you just simply use one of those specific type of one of those specific type of containers specifically for that, for dishonorable uses. And so you simply released yourself there and left, and because you were too lazy, you would throw it out the window many times, or any place you can find. But yes, this was the container. There were containers for noble purposes and others for standard, everyday purposes, such as we saw here. The metal containers was for more noble purposes, and those for not noble purposes are those such as the chamber pot. And today, times have not changed. We have, the ladies, emphasizing containers, and I want to put all my containers and all these, all my cereals in these glass containers, all the cereals here, and all my pastas, the spaghettis in this container here. I don't want to see any cartons, milk cartons, or anything. You just want to see nothing but containers. And obviously we're emphasizing plastic nowadays. Times have changed in terms of aesthetics. We do not emphasize golden containers, and I'm pretty sure many of the ladies do not want golden containers nowadays. Maybe just for something else, but not to have them on their fridge or in their drawer, wherever. Also, the men, they use containers as well. Some containers, they use it for their more new tools. Other containers are used for their lesser used tools, their older tools. Or how about their rags? Their older rags and the dirty rags go in a certain type of container, a bucket, and other newer rags in another type of container. Point 2. Under the doctrine of election, now we're going over a verse, Acts chapter 9, verse 15. Under the doctrine of election, the believer is called a chosen vessel. Acts chapter 9, verse 15. And I believe I have this here, talking about Paul. But the Lord said to Ananias, this is the first person to approach Paul, "Go, this man is my chosen," look, instrument. What? Instrument? Yes, it can be an instrument. It's a vessel. Ekloges, chosen, going to the doctrine of election. All the way back in the divine decrees, he is the chosen vessel. Unto me, this one, to bear my name in the presence of the Gentiles, the Gentile kings, and the sons of Israel. And this was the Apostle Paul. Okay. That was point 2. The vessel means that he needs to be filled with doctrine. All of us are a vessel. We need to be filled with doctrine. Without doctrine, we're empty. Just as the woman is empty without her right man, she needs to be filled with love every day, on a daily basis, with knowledge and love and everything that he can give her as a loving and gentleman right man. Also us, we need to be filled by our right man, which is God, the Lord Jesus Christ. Point 3. Another passage. The vessels are used to demonstrate the essence of God in his treatment of believers and unbelievers. Look at this one. This was a difficult passage. Now, this is one of those passages that people say, oh, we do not understand what it's talking about. We will find out whenever we are in heaven. Well, that's where we're going to find out what this verse is about. No, you don't have to wait. You could find out right now. Here, let me explain to you. So, it's talking about vessels, both believers and unbelievers. So Paul here pretends like he's the jackass. pretending like he's the one that asked, then why does God still blame us? For who is able to resist his will? But who are you, human being, to talk back to God? Shall what is formed say to the one who formed it, why did you make me like this? Does not the potter have the right to make out of the same lump of clay some pottery for special purposes and some for common use? And so here's the lump of clay, and God is the potter. Here is humanity, and out of these humanity you have both positive volition towards the gospel and negative volition towards the gospel. You have both believers and unbelievers. And so from the same lump of clay, he creates some vessels for noble purposes. Look at this fantastic vessel here. Looks like ears, but looks wonderful in contrast to that vessel for refuse. And so this represents the believers out of the same lump, and this is the unbelievers. And yes, many times he'll use those unbelievers to demonstrate the greatness of his plan in favor of those who are believers. And so here the skeptic says, well, then why does God blame me? Still blame us, for who is able to resist his will? And so verse 22, what if God, although choosing to show his wrath and make his power known, bore with great patience the objects of his wrath, prepared for destruction? What if he did this to make the riches of his glory known to the objects of his mercy? Objects of his mercy are believers, whom he prepared in advance for glory. So he's saying, what if God, knowing even though that you were gonna be an unbeliever, destined to the lake of fire, he still created you, and he chose to put you in a certain situation so to demonstrate the riches of his glory to those who are the objects of his mercy, those who are believers. This passage is not that difficult. Obviously, I benefited from someone, but this passage is not that difficult. The reason why people want to make it so difficult is because a Calvinist ideology, fatalism, saying that, God kind of just out of his own sovereignty, he chose who would believe and who would not believe, without your free will. And that's why people struggle so much with this passage. But the lump of clay implies all humanity, those who would believe out of their own volition and those who would not believe out of their own volition. Hence, God still creates those who would not believe as vessels of dishonor, and those who would believe as vessels of honor. Excuse me. Let me finish reading this. Verse 19 I got ahead of myself, sets the context by having Paul pretend to be the ignorant person who questions God. Then Paul responds, A, the character of God is perfect. He can do no wrong. B, the sovereignty of God is part of the character of God. Therefore, the sovereignty of God is perfect. And C, if his sovereignty is perfect, then his decisions are perfect. His decisions are perfect. Who are you to question him?